Right. So we usually start these off just asking you to maybe explain the view from here. If you can look at the landscape and kind of orient us to what is surrounding us right now.
Okay. So this tower is oriented to the due direction. So we're looking due south here, due north is behind us, east, and then west. And we are in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, which crosses both into Montana as well as into Idaho. Obviously, we're on the Idaho side. And we can see several lookouts. Due south of us, we've got 12 miles away is Salmon Mountain, which is staffed by volunteers. To our southwest on the horizon, you can actually see it a bump up. It's 9 miles as the crow flies, and that's Burnt Knob, right at the edge of the Bitterroot Forest and also the Nez Perce Forest. Looking out to our east, we've got Hell's Half to our southeast, about 15 miles away. You've got Bear Cone Lookout just breaking the horizon out there, and that's probably about 13, 14 miles away. And then 30 miles away from us, we can barely see it, is Lookout Mountain. And those are all on the on the West Fork district of the Bitterroot National Forest. The Bitterroot Crest are the big mountains that you see out here. Mount Jerusalem kind of is at the corner, that's slightly sloped mountain, and over north of that, with some clouds behind it, I hope those are clouds, is El Capitan, just over 10,000. Well, that's just under 10,000. And in between them is Trapper Peak, which is just over 10,000, the highest peak in the Bitterroots. And to our north, running from south to north is the Selway River, just down below us, and and we have tributaries feeding into it from both sides, obviously. And we have Gardner Peak over to our northeast. We have Schisler almost due north of us, and several other lookouts there on the Nez Perce Forest. To our west, and showing the border between the two forests, we've got Three Prong Mountain in the drop-off. And you also may be able to pick up a fire, almost 12,000 acre fire, is the Lynx fire that's now burned onto the Bitterroot.
So Rhett, you called that in. Can you just tell us maybe what that experience is like, calling that fire in?
Well, it was unusual because I saw it at 3:30 in the morning. We had a lightning storm come through, but it was so smoky you really couldn't see any of the strikes. You were just locating them by listening, which is kind of unusual for for a lookout. Anyway, I knew there had been a strike to the northwest. And I woke up and I just was kind of looking around. I saw an orange glow. Couldn't see any flames, but just a glow. So I tried to sight it and locate it in the dark, which is always fun. And I thought, well, 3:30, I think I'll try to take a look at it in the morning. So I got up early and I was totally smoked in, so I couldn't see it at all. So I turned it in with a night or early morning location that I came up with in the dark. And it was not, I felt like it was big enough as far as the glow went that it was going to be there in the morning, and it was. So yeah, it was pretty exciting. It's always exciting when you see a fire.
And so how long is you said to call that in your early July?
Mm-hmm.
When you called that one in?
17th.
So how have you watched it change? Is it more or less contained now, or is it still being actively fought? Or
well, it was on the Nez Perce National Forest, and they had a lot of activity this summer. They had a lot of their resources committed, and this is. I don't believe it is wilderness, but
on their side
borders borders the
Right.
wilderness, and not a lot of structures, in that part. And they decided to let the fire go. And it was roughly 5 miles from us, not too far from the border, probably, I don't know, 3 miles or so from the border. And it has been very interesting. It hasn't come this way towards the tower, which would be southeast, sorry. But it has burned a lot of the Nez Perce forest. And let's see, we were recently gone for about a week, and during our absence it blew up and did burn over into the Bitterroot. So, and that is what you're seeing here, but didn't come towards us. It went northeast of us, which is great, but it is still active, and there are some resources that the Bitterroot will be responsible for, some in-holdings, private ranches.
Running Creek Ranch
and North Star.
So in its path, but there may be some moisture between now and then.
Yeah, and they're, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 miles from those in-holdings.
And how long have you been up on this tower for, the two of you?
This is this season, or how long have we staffed this tower?
This particular tower.
This
here.
is our 5th season here.
So we saw some pretty recent burn scars walking up. Were you present for any of those, or?
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a story about that?
2017, early September.
Labor Day weekend, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Labor Day weekend, and there were 6 fires around. I mean, it's kind of like a crescent. I had one down in Eagle Creek, down below, which I really couldn't see unless it got active, and several just all the way around. And I was just monitoring.
I had gone down back to school.
Yes, Mark had gone back to teach. And the conditions were, kind of fall conditions where it's kind of dry and continued to be dry. And our FMO called and said they had decided to wrap the tower and take me down. And they were going to bring the wrap materials in the next morning. And I said, whoa, okay.
And that's always kind of a sad time, because once
Yes.
they wrap your tower, you're going to be homeless.
You're gone
So
then. But he said, looking at the predictions, they're giving us about 5 days till this Eagle Creek fire would get to the tower. So obviously you want to have it wrapped and people out of the way before that event happens. So a crew came up, and we were in the midst of wrapping the tower. We had all the shutters up, and it's like a big baked potato when you get that, wrap all over you. And the Skylar, the person that was leading the crew, said, I was in here doing something, and she said, come out here and look at this. And I come out, and there are these just tremendous flames coming up.
we'll show you a picture later.
From down, in Eagle Creek. And so we had already taken the radio down and all of the phone stuff, and had a handheld radio, and were able to get in touch with West Fork. And I explained to him that our trigger points had already been compromised. The fire's gone beyond that. You're trying not to sound too alarmist or excited, but Skylar, the woman who was leading the crew, was able to get a photo to our FMO, and he sent a helicopter immediately and evacuated all of us. He said, just finish up whatever loose ends you can. We were not completely through wrapping it, and we all left. That is the first time I've ever been evacuated by helicopter.
For a fire, yeah.
Yeah, for a fire. We've had 10.
That was our 9th.
Yeah, that was our 9th evacuation.
And Skylar helped out with another one in 2008 when I was up, and she's a good person to have if
Oh,
you're
yeah,
being
she's-
evacuated.
But it, talk about adrenaline. I had my dog, trying to get my dog on a helicopter. That was that was interesting. But that was a little too close. I don't think any of us. It was not expected at all. The air patrol had, flown it earlier, and it did not give any indication it was going to blow like that. But it was quite impressive. But we were fortunate. The wind blew the fire just north of us, so it did not change directions. And
When conditions get like that, you really are at the mercy of the wind.
it's true. And this fire that we have currently, for the most part, the wind has been, well, I guess the entire time, it's been very favorable
Right.
for this tower. So,
Do you think that it could? I mean, I don't know a lot about fuels, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, do you think it could spread here? If
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
yes.
If you look between that fire, actually, can you see the rocky outcropping there? It's called the drop off. And then that's about 3 miles or so. And the fire is actually just on the other side of that as well. So if it crested that ridge there, and you can see some old burns there, but for the most part, you've got continuous timber and continuous fuels. And so if the wind were just right or just wrong, then it could easily.
You can see how much unburned timber we have, below us, and
Which
all
we
the way
love,
around to the south behind you. It's beautiful. It's really, there've been some fires, but this is
Right.
our green area.
Yeah.
So a lot of fuel.
think about the way that the landscape changes, right, over time. I'm assuming over the time you've been here, due to fire and things like that, you watch the landscape
Right.
itself change.
Right.
Do you feel as though by the time you leave a tower, it's the same place, or is it?
That's a great question. We've seen it more at Hell's Half, where we were for 20 years or 20 seasons, and it's that landscape is completely changed, and that is heartbreaking because it's places where you hike, as well as that you look, and but yeah, the landscape changes. But we've always referred to this as a kind of as a reference point to come back, and I mean, we get so busy, in town, if you will, and with our jobs, with other things going on, that it's easy to kind of lose track of who you are as an individual. But you come back here, and there is a constance. There is like I say, a reference point to where you can kind of gauge who you become or who you're becoming. Does that make any sense? But yeah, no, we have watched the landscape change, and we've watched what used to be the big one that you would get maybe once in a lifetime or twice happen, very, very frequently. Things are changing. There is a new normal for sure.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Can you give us some examples of how you've measured that change over time?
Well, in our second year here? No, our second year, 99. Was that our third? 97, our third year here. We were at Hell's Half, and we had a fire. Actually, 2 fires emerged called the Devil's Storm, which was our first evacuation, which we were able to drive out. And the next year was 2000, which was a huge year in this part of the world for fires. I mean, I remember watching over in Razorback Mountain over there, 10 strikes and 9 fires start from it. That's a pretty high percentage. And there were just fires everywhere. And so much of the burn that you see around you right now happened in 2000. 2003, 2005, 2007, all were big, big years.
And we started with the Forest Service in Arizona, and just policy, fire management has changed a lot. When we first started, I think
That was 1980.
every fire was put out.
Except at the very end, we had the very first P&F, prescribed natural fire, on that forest in Arizona, the Apache sitgreaves. Yeah.
And that became a policy prescribed natural fire. And as I have understood it, they come up with a plan, boundaries for a fire, and they will not do anything to contain it unless it burns outside of that. So it's kind of a prescribed area where fire would be considered beneficial in the landscape.
But sometimes people don't tell the fire what the prescription is.
Yes.
And it's.
And then we've had what would you call it? Let burn kind of policy. I don't
Right.
really know.
It's gone through a number of acronyms, but yeah, for many years we had a ranger who was very interested in letting fires burn, and you can debate, we probably shouldn't do it right here, but we could debate how much is too much, and how much do you figure in, climate change, and, having lived in the woods for 39 summers, you get to see things change, and they are changing. They definitely are changing, and it's and just all you have to do is look around you and see how much is burned. So I think that the pendulum swings back and forth between suppression and then allowing things to burn. What is a natural fire anymore? Can you actually figure in climate change into that? I don't know. It's pretty tricky thing to do. Our jobs, however, are not to make those decisions. Our jobs are to see the fire as quickly as we can, report it as quickly as we can, as accurately, location-wise as we can, and then other people then decide what to do with it. And sometimes you have the choice. Sometimes the fire stays small enough and you've got resources available. Sometimes, as in this fire here, resources are stretched so thin that when you have a fire in the wilderness area, which is away from the urban interface, then there's a tendency to, not to put resources out here. Another fire, the one that evacuated Rhett in 2017, there was a helicopter coming to put it out, with a crew to suppress it. However, they got diverted en route to an urban interface fire, and so as a result, the Eagle Creek fire, which burned quite a bit, not as much as this one, but was allowed to go. And once it gets to a certain size, it's so difficult to put them out. It really is. Yeah.
I'm thinking about how you just talked about how your job is just to watch the fires and to report them, and something that keeps coming up in the interviews with other people who have mentioned you is that you're really good at watching for fires. People have mentioned this several times to us, that you're really good eyes, and I want to know how, what is it that you do that makes you particularly effective at spotting a fire?
Well, for one thing, there's two of us. So you have two sets of eyes. And
when we had kids, we had
we had kids, and yes, and they would be looking. And like I say, and one of our children continues to be a lookout. But it's when we started in Arizona. Okay, we had our closest neighbors were Mitchell and Linda on Saddle Mountain, which is just inside of New Mexico. We were right on the eastern border, and we looked into the Mogollon, mountains, the Gila Wilderness, just incredible country, and right on the edge of the Mogollon Rims. Anyway, Mitchell and Linda were paid, both paid 8 hours a day. They overlapped during the burning period to watch for fires. They were in a live-in tower, and we were we had a cabin on the ground and then a small 7x7 box that we'd go into during working hours, and these guys were very they were looking all the time, and they were very competitive.
Very good.
Yeah,
very good.
And
that was our training.
And so we had people, and then we had other lookouts who felt very similar about it. And I had one of my friends said, "This sounds more like a sport than a job." And there is a sense of pride that you want to cover your territory. and if possible, you can count some coup by getting one in somebody else's territory. And I don't know if this was by design with the Forest Service, that this kind of perhaps natural competitive spirit, but it seemed to work. And so, and there were some unwritten rules too, that you just didn't turn the fire in, you also turned it in with a complete size up, you know, with the location, with your azimuth, with your township range section, quarter section, slope, you know, exposure on the slope, placement on the slope. Anyway, and so it gets very, very exciting when you're up here and a fire starts. And then you also, when we first started, when we started here, we were told, now you want to wait and make sure that the fire doesn't go out before you report it too. So
different kind of forest here than in Arizona.
In Arizona, pretty much everything's stuck, you know.
You see smoke, it's going to be a fire.
And so,
not so much here.
Because then at that particular time, the administrative duties were different. So if you turned a fire in, it created a lot of work in the office, you know. And so you wanted to knowing that you do have some flare-ups that naturally go out, you want to try to be as sure as you can that fire is going to stick around. But it's a two-edged sword. You don't want to let it go too far either. So anyway,
that was a difficult
different
thing for us to adjust to.
I would say here that there's probably more of a spirit of cooperation among the lookouts, that we do, you know, that it's not just this cutthroat competition, you know, who can get the smoke first. I think this forest is probably more like it should be. And you know, in our district is a really good one. We have known all the lookouts for a long time. I mean, Barracone, Mark Rhodes is over there. He started the same year we did with the Bitterroot. Jim and Christy Bacon are on Lookout Mountain, and they've been there, I don't know, 20-something years, I think. And we also taught with Jim in Billings. And we know many of the volunteers over at Salmon Mountain as well. And we know some of the other lookouts on the other parts of the forest, but not, there are some new faces recently. Yeah, but and that's part of it. It's a personal pride. I mean, you know, a sense of pride that you want to, you know, get that smoke as quickly as you can. And we figure if we can save an air tanker drop, you know, we perhaps pay for our season, you know, our wages being up here. So, yeah.
Speaking of competition, most competition we ever experienced was over on Hell's Half, and our son was on Gardner Peak. So we could not, you know, we had to be on top of things with him sitting over there, because he would have liked nothing better than to burn his parents, you know, by turning in a fire first. That we could see.
And we pretty much consider anything we can see as our territory. So anyway, it was competitive, but you know, it's also, the longer you are in a place, you become very familiar with your territory, with your area. It's like, you know, you can kind of compare it to walking in your living room and there's painting or something on the wall. The table's a little bit different or something.
That's crooked, and you say, whoa, that doesn't look quite right. And you can, you know, become so familiar, you can just say, oh, that's not right. A lot of times it will be light, or maybe a rock slide,
or a dust devil, or pollen,
but
road dust.
You become, I mean, your brain just helps you
and
have that information. I don't know.
Most of the smokes we've seen, I would say, happen. I mean, sometimes when you're intensely looking after a lightning storm, for sure, but smokes don't often come. They often will come much later. I mean, we've had a bona fide holdover for 3 weeks at a time. So you can't just, you know, hang out and not look. You have to be looking all the time. Plus the human element as well. Even though most of our smokes, the vast majority are lightning caused, you know, you do have people out there, and that makes a difference. Yeah, as Rhett was saying, you're looking for something that's different for the anomaly, the change. And even though that's a rock slide over there and you've seen it every afternoon light up with the sun, it still gets you going,
So you get binoculars and
Right.
double check.
Also, we have some things that can confuse you are water dogs. Do you know what I mean? These columns
heard
of
that?
steam, or it's ground fog that can take on a variety of shapes, and some of those things can look just like smoke, and they'll come up right where the lightning's been. So
Frequently
Yeah.
after storms have come through, and you really have to watch them.
right, we do. Of course, we have cell coverage up here, which is good and bad, I suppose. Back in the day, all we had was a radio, but with your, you can contact people by phone, and you can get on your lightning tracker app, and which I've discovered are not very accurate. The apps, they don't jive with what we are seeing. So it's sometimes yes, but not all the time. So you can't really rely on that.
Do you think that there's something we're thinking about this a lot in our project? Is there's even though there are many remaining lookouts in specifically Idaho we're thinking
Yeah.
about, but there was once over 1,000, right, or close to 1,000.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and now there's far fewer in that standing
Right.
and far fewer in that staff now, and so there's an obsolescence kind of occurring, where the fire tower is, because of technology, becoming a little bit less essential in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that there is something lost in the transition away from the human staffed fire lookout?
If yes, I do. I'm not biased or anything, but I definitely do. Number one, if we had a webcam up here, okay, the webcam's not talking to you right now, by the way, or any other visitor who might come through. Plus, somebody's got to be reading that somewhere in an office, perhaps. There's something about being up here. There's a kind of a feel that you get, as we've spoken earlier, for the forest, and that can use technology. We use the radio, we use the cell phone. We do that, and we will look at the lightning tracker, the radar, for sure, to see what's coming, where it is. But but I think those things there's satellites. So if there's an infrared flight, we had one last night that comes over and checks out the boundaries of the fire. We'll look at that for sure. And I think that we have the firefighter, the Osborne firefighter right there, which has been popular since the 30s, I believe. That wasn't always around, and we'll use that, and binoculars too. I mean, and better binoculars for sure. But I think that, if you take away, can you really remove the human element from it? From this whole idea of detecting fires? Not really. Somebody's got to be, watching somewhere. And I just think it's so much better, up here at a tower. Are there risks? Yeah. I mean, I guess you could fall down the stairs, but I think it's, personally, particularly in this day and age, it's one of the best places in the world to be. Talk about social distancing. But no, I think that there are some traditions that we have in the various institutions in our country, and I think with the Forest Service that look out, the pack train, the packer who still knows the art of packing animals and managing animals, and those traditions are valuable and worth keeping. I don't know. What do you
Lookout's main job, of course, is reporting fires. But you also serve as communication in situations for people working out, in remote areas. So that's another function.
There's not
Lookouts.
constant radio coverage everywhere out here.
Yeah.
You can be in a valley somewhere, a canyon that you're not going to be able to get out, and
And also, if you have people on a fire, you have eyes, on the fire. You know where people are, so you can alert people on a fire to incoming weather, any kind of changes that you happen to see. Maybe a fire gets really active in an area that you need to let people that are actually on the ground working know those dangers. There are other aspects to the job other than spotting and reporting fires.
Trail crews too. We had
Yeah.
one. We were in 2013 during the Gold Pan fire. We got moved over to Salmon Mountain Lookout and had a trail crew out, and they were unaware of a fire coming in from the Nez. And
They were sending them to camp at a cabin that was
very
right
close,
in the-
to an advancing fire. In 2003, we were at Hell's Half, and our daughter was a firefighter. I think it was her first year as a firefighter, our eldest daughter, and we were listening to the salmon in a fire. They had about 7 fires going on down there. And one of them was called the Kramer Fire. It's just over the border, maybe, 20 air miles away. And we listened as a series of events unfolded, and 2 Helitack guys got burned up. And it was horrible. And our daughter was on a fire just to the east of us and getting ready to go onto another fire that was blowing up. And we've always felt a responsibility for firefighters, but on the ground, particularly in fires that are in our area. But I'll tell you, when you have one of your own out there, it really makes you think about it even more. And that's, as Rhett was saying, that's one of our, I think, greatest responsibilities up here. And a satellite, it's not going to help those guys, anyway, so. Yeah, we think it's worth having the tower up here and people staffing it.
Do you think that it's just that this might be a weird question, but do you find that there's a lot of attention we are sort of assigning to this act of watching, and maybe is part of the equation it's not just watching. Are there other sensations that you're tapping into when you're up here, or is it simply the act of watching?
I mean, the act of watching is great. I mean, we're both in art, and we're being paid to look at stuff, which is
How incredible is that?
It is, and it's. So, are you talking about what we personally feel, or what?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the job itself, or are you? I mean,
it's I guess it just occurred to me when you were talking, but is it just looking out, or is it also feeling the wind shift?
Sure.
Is it detecting a smell of some kind?
Oh, yeah. You can smell the smoke, for sure. If that's it. You can sense the humidity. I mean, we have a device right there that will tell us what the actual percentage of moisture in the area is, but yeah, you could certainly feel that, and you can, when you're walking, you can hear needles underfoot, how they sound when you walk, and if they're super dry, you can certainly tell it. So it's, I'm not sure taste gets involved so much, but other senses are definitely involved in it, for sure, and maybe that you're not really consciously processing, that just kind of naturally just become aware.
I have a question kind of related to that, and like the way that you've talked about the elements and kind of having this kind of being more attuned to things like the wind and obviously fire and smoke and like water, the dryness of the land, and just kind of like having this strong attachment to the place and the scene area, and like having this real deep understanding of where you are, right? You talked about the what helps you to spot a fire is the fact that you know the place so well that you can notice these minor differences. And I'm just curious what you think, like, one, how your relationship to like the land has changed through your experience, your long experience as fire lookouts, and like what do you gain from that somebody who's never experienced, who has never had this occupation?
You want to start it?
Well, we talked to friends, family members that some of whom have visited us on towers, and they're like, oh, I could not do that. And the idea of, we have had times when we've both staffed, the tower solo. I could never do that alone. And I can't imagine not doing it. It's you get to see this. You get to wake up and see the sunrise every morning, see the sunset, the moon come up, stars. You get to see the change of the seasons. You get to observe animals. I don't know. And it's interesting, after our first tower, they stopped staffing it, the one in Arizona, and I just thought, I will never, ever love a place as much as I love that place. And we moved to Hell's Half, and we loved that tower, so it's like you become attached to, those wild places. I don't really know.
No,
if
it's
that's
true. I mean,
answering
it
the
is.
question at all.
There's
but
okay. A little bit of it of a side, but I'll bring it back. One of our lookout friends has said, there's not a whole lot of difference between us working and not working when you're up here. You go on. Today we go in at 9:30, and then you get off. We'll certainly get off at 6 o'clock. Okay, but when you wake up, you're looking. When you go and you're aware. I mean, it's like Rhett gets up in the middle of the night. She sees a glow. Then she's you do what you need to do with that. You can't help it. And so our job kind of instills in us a sense of responsibility, for this area, and it's not only just for the trees, and other, foliage that's out there, but also for the animals, as well. I mean, it's, seeing, different birds, seeing different mammals, whatever it is. I mean, that's just always such a joy for us to do it. Or that butterfly right there. There's a sense of responsibility for that. And fire is one of the things that, can take some of that out. So, if we can make that call, that's all the better. But it goes beyond the job for sure. You talked about senses. If I stop talking right now, what do you hear? Where can you go and not hear? Planes come over, sure, but you're not hearing any other mechanical sounds. You hear this quiet, and it's really something. At night, we see no permanent artificial lights, none at all. There are some roads that we can pick out here, like the Magruder Corridor, and every now and then you'll see headlights, but and occasionally the glow of a fellow lookout's lantern, but the night sky, it's really, really something. And I mean, we both grew up in in the South, the Bible Belt. My dad was a pastor, and so we were pretty much steeped in the Sunday school and the Bible, etc. But I don't know if you know the book of the Psalms at all, attributed to David, but it's like living, when you live out here, it's like living in the book of Psalms, but in terms of the beauty, the grandeur, the holy freaking terror. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a lightning storm, which is, I can't think of many places I'd rather be, to be honest. I don't want to be hiking in it, but in a lookout tower, we're very well protected. It is just tremendous. When you see 300-foot flames, just a few miles away, and you see an air tanker like spitting on it, it's not bad for us humans to experience things that show us how vulnerable we really are, how insignificant we are. And you look at the night sky, and you see a planet, you realize that's what we are too, just floating around out there. kind of helps put things in perspective. It makes me wonder, why do I worry about anything, anyway. But no, yeah, attachment to the land, oh, for sure. It's heartbreaking to see things, completely burned. Not that fire is the enemy. Don't get me wrong. Fire is just as natural as rain. But when it really starts taking everything out, it breaks our heart, for sure.
I'm just curious how you kind of talked about cultivating a kind of ethics through your experience up here, and I'm wondering in a different worldview, right, from this grander perspective and a different kind of way of orienting yourself to the natural world or even the human world, and I'm curious how you bring that back with you when you go down in the.
I remember the first time we came off the lookout tower in Arizona. I won't tell that story. Okay. Anyway, it's great to be able to pee outside. Anyway, we went to a mall in Flagstaff. It's like we just freaked out.
We thought, oh, this will be great. And we could not stand.
We had to. We ran out virtually screaming with our hair on fire, But no, I mean, you get used to it. You come back. I mean, I like people, for the most part, and.
But it is so. You sit in your living room, or anywhere in your house, and you hear traffic, or you hear somebody in their backyard. There are all these other sounds. You turn on the tap. You're not hiking down to the spring with canteens on your back to bring up your drinking water.
Oh, water's
it's
totally
and it's so odd to come back and have a hot shower. It's one of the best things in the world.
I probably use more in that first hot shower than I do the whole summer.
But
seriously.
There's that part of you that remembers how precious that is. It gives you pause. It really does. You think, wow.
I mean, we gathered up 26 gallons of snow melt earlier in the week. I felt so wealthy.
It's a different kind of wealth. The wealth that you have here by what you see and experience, and you go back and it's not as rich.
No,
it really isn't.
It's almost as if you're counting the days before fire season starts again. I mean, where in your existence, how can you spend so much time where you are the minority species? I know there are bugs and viruses and stuff, but I mean, up here, I mean, you're like the what? Like the fourth and fifth visitors we've had all summer. Up here. I mean, where can you be for so long? And not just everything being so human-centric, And I think, to me, that's a valuable thing to realize that, why does everything have to revolve around humans? And, I guess we're naturally selfish and stuff, but it's, I love being in the minority up here, for sure. And the earth doesn't really need us. We need the earth, but it doesn't really need us. Probably be better off without us personally. But it might sound a little extreme, but it's it's the truth. In a place like, one of the things about being up here is you have time to think. And I don't know, you've been in college and stuff. All these things you got to do. You got to think about certain kinds of things. Very specific things. Here, you can think about a lot of stuff, and I think that's a something that's really good, and I look forward to every year. When we first started doing this, we've been married. Not quite 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost 2 years. And people said, "You guys will get a divorce," and it was like probably the very best thing, for our marriage was to be up here in a place like this, and not that we never fought or argued or disagreed. I mean, we almost got separated over building a rock water bar one day.
Choice of rocks.
Yeah, where the rocks going to go, but it's. I don't know. It's a place where you get to know each other without so many distractions that other human beings can give you sometimes. But 43 years and counting. So
You described that connection though you felt too, like you were describing the camaraderie you felt with the other firefighters, right?
Yeah.
Down low, and you having this empathy because you had a daughter who was
Mhm.
also a firefighter, and you were able to look at them in a different way because of that, and there's this connection you felt. And do you bring that back with you, or is it something that you feel more intensely out here than when you are back home in civilization?
that's a good question. I mean, the pool of humans is a lot smaller out here. For one thing, I think anytime you find yourself in a situation like where there are a smaller community, I think perhaps that connection could be greater. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. There's something about I don't even know the simplicity, I guess, of this situation. And I think this is part of your job, but maybe it does make you more aware of the people around you too. Maybe. That's kind of a difficult question. I'm not sure I can.
No, No, when we have firefighters, out here, and we had a fire earlier right down here in Haystack Mountain, and you could actually see the guys down there in the fire, and you do, again, there's a responsibility, you feel for them, and there is a sense of, I think, of common purpose.
But I think, if you're asking, do we have the same empathy for people, is this kind of where the question is?
I think so. I mean, not to become too transparent as to where I'm trying to take this, but I think that the tower, maybe, we've heard some people talk about how it almost becomes a microcosm for the rest of the world. You talk about things like climate change and everything you observe, and it's like, the philosophical conundrums you encounter in the tower, the camaraderie, the society of fire lookouts themselves. I think something we're thinking about is like how does that implemented and relevant when people go back, right? Too, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think Mark's dad used to say everybody's somebody, and I guess that's maybe the simplest way to look at, relating to other people, and people that have real high-powered jobs, people that have more menial jobs. Everybody is a person, and everybody deserves respect. And
I think the pandemic has shown us that those menial jobs are the more important jobs.
And
really,
it's maybe I don't think it's. I don't know. I try not to judge people.
For me to come off the tower is always, I would stay here as long as I possibly could, and then immediately go into the classroom. So on day one you see more people than you saw all summer. In one room, and so that student-teacher relationship is as immediate, and I don't know that the tower consciously affects me so much. It's affected me so much, with that. But I had a thought. It just kind of escaped me. But maybe I'll come back to it in a minute.
Do you have one, Chris, or I have one for you?
You go for it.
Okay, I thought you were gonna
go for it.
So earlier you were talking about was it the Book of Psalm?
Yeah.
Right, and your father. I was thinking about this long mythology of going up on the mountaintop, you know, to have a revelation of some kind. And I'm thinking too about there's a lineage of fire lookout mythology as well. Gary Schneider,
Yeah,
Ed Abbey, you know, Black Sun,
yeah.
Jack Kerouac, right,
Yeah.
Desolation Peak, and I'm wondering how this might be two-part. How you see yourself as fitting into that mythology, and also if you yourself have, you know, either of you have had that, you know, a revelatory moment on the mountaintop.
I'll tell you a funny story. We were actually visiting our son on his tower in Arizona, where we all as a family had staffed at one point. But we were there, and this guy from Phoenix comes up, and he said, "I have come to Escadilla to find out what I need to do with the rest of my life." He said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Well, tell me more, you know." And anyway, we talked for a while, and I said, "It sounds like to me like you need to go into environmental law." He said, "That's it. That's what I'm going to do." Anyway, I mean, it was kind of that kind of almost a caricature of the supplicant going up to the mountaintop, you know, to the old dude sitting on there to ask, you know, what's the meaning of life. I think that I don't know. Do you have anything? And I'll come back to. Let me gather my thoughts.
It seems like it's a very calming place. You know, you take it can be not calm at all in a storm, or there's some seasons we have barely had time to sit down because it was so busy.
But most days are just like this.
Yes. So you do have a calmness, I think, that you take away from being on top of the mountain. And I think when things get really hectic in your life, not on the lookout tower, it's something that you can recall. You know, you can kind of put yourself in a space of, okay, let me just think about what's really important here, and you know, it's helpful. So I don't know if that's as far as a revelation. I mean, yeah, there have been. I think there are many revelations that you have.
I could do the monk thing. I mean, I think I was up here 6 weeks, not here, but in Bear Mountain by myself once, and also do calligraphy. So it's almost like being a scribe in a scriptorium too, cutting turkey feathers that you find for your quills. But we often joked about you could be up here too by yourself and maybe get a little too introspective. We had a fellow lookout who had been on there for a long time, and he seemed to be, you know, we used to say, you know, this guy's been up here asking himself these questions and giving himself the wrong answers, you know. And I think that you can, it's very helpful to have another person there as a sounding board, I think, to help, you know, kind of keep that kind of stuff at bay.
Yeah, you're getting a little out there. You
Yeah.
know, that's really me.
Right. I mean, so, yeah, I like it both. I do like it by myself, but I like it better with Rhett here. I mean, just talking earlier about looking the night sky. I mean, that's really something. I mean, and that to me even gives me more of a perspective of what it might mean. You know, what it means to be a human being. I don't know. It does, and again, the feeling of insignificance, but also you're the center of the universe at the same time. You know, and I think that seems to be, you know, at the heart of a lot of religions, trying to grapple with your own importance, but also you're just a speck of dust at most, really, when you think about the universe.
I heard the lookout call that the long view.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great way.
Yeah.
You know, it's topographical, cosmic, you know, just being able to look out and sort of have that perspective.
Yeah.
I have one one last one if you want to kick in some, but I heard one of you earlier mention the term wild space, and something that we're trying to parse out as well is if there's a relationship between the fire lookout structure and its history and official wilderness spaces.
Granville, Battalion 7 on Rocky.
We know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, it's this juxtaposition of,
Yeah, Greenville, I'm in service.
we have this radio going on right now, and we've got this, this environment, the structure, this environment that you can control, the heat, and the comfort, and we just love it. I mean, we do. I mean, it would be a different experience out camping. I'm not saying we couldn't do it, but this seems to be strike a balance. And again, it's kind of an artificial deal because we can only we're not farming, we're not gathering and hunting up here and providing for ourselves.
And we have a packer
water, yes,
that has
yeah.
packed
Right.
propane up here for the
Right.
stove.
Right.
We have clothing we didn't pack up here. We have books. We have art supplies that we didn't personally
Pack up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have thought about that. We've also thought about that we're in in a part of the largest contiguous area of wilderness in the lower 48 right now. If you do the Frank Church and all the other wilderness areas around it, but you also have the Magruder corridor going right through the middle of it.